In this video, I just want to talk about the process of analyzing qualitative data that you have gathered through interviews with people. So you're doing research on humans, and you then need to go through the process of analyzing that data. Now, there's a range of methods that you can use. I use grounded theory in my PhD, but there are others that you can use. And at the core of it, of all of these methods, really, is your ability to analyze transcripts. So you've done an interview with somebody, and you'll probably have to do 10, 15, 20, 30. It depends on the scope of your research and on your methodology. But let's talk through the process for just one interview. And I'll use grounded theory as an example, but what I talk about now is certainly very applicable for any type of qualitative research involving humans. So now you've had your interview. You most definitely should have audio recorded that interview. I video recorded mine as well, and good to be able to go back and watch, body language, etc. I did all of mine digitally, and I think, in 2020, certainly if you're doing research, you're not going to have done any in-person interviews. It's all going to be digital on Zoom or Skype or Teams or anything like that. So hopefully you'll have got that recording, but you absolutely really should have had that audio recording, and from that you'll generate a transcript, so the word-for-word transcript of the interview, and you should have had some field notes. So these are just notes that you take during the interview. So now, after the interview, you sit with a transcript, your field notes, the audio, and all the video recording. And what do you do? So what I did was, within 24 hours, type up your reflections on that interview. So just have some formal notes as a result of that interview, because as each day passes, your own memory of that interview is going to start getting less and less. And you really, as quickly as possible after that interview, need to document your thoughts about it. And once again, always use your research questions. Now, you should have had some good research questions, and that was in your proposal stage, and go and do my course on writing a good proposal, and you'll have a good thesis statement. I teach you how to do a good thesis statement. We talk about the importance of research questions, and your lens, your magnifying glass on your interview data, and when you think back about those interviews, is always going to be through your research questions. So in your notes that you type up within 24 hours, look back on that interview through the research questions. Were there any enlightening conversations in that interview, or discussions, or facts shared, or experience, etc., that helped you to answer your research questions? Because that's ultimately what you're going to have to do, is answer the research questions through your analysis of the data. So once you've got those notes, and in many cases, the person you're interviewing would like to see those notes, and they'd actually like to get the audio recording. And it depends. Remember, you'll have had to ask consent from them to do this interview in the first place, and there will usually be some sort of ethics clearance process through your institution. So make sure that you comply with all of those requirements as per that policy. Okay, so now you've done all that, you've got all that data, you've made some notes, you've done your best to capture and record your memory of that interview. Now, then, when you've got a little bit more time, and again, don't leave it too long, because if you're doing lots of interviews, you're just building up lots of work for yourself to go back and analyze these interviews properly. Then what I want to talk about is, in grounded theory, what's called line-by-line coding. But the principles are exactly the same for other qualitative research methodologies. So now you're going to sit with your transcript, and you're going to go through that transcript line by line. Now, a lot of people talk about qualitative research tools like NVivo and Atlas, and I think I mentioned there was a coaching call that I had last week, and we were talking about exactly this with the lady, and she said, what tool must I use? And so I said, well, first understand what you're trying to do, and then we talked about this line-by-line coding. So when you do line-by-line coding, you go through line by line of the transcript, looking for incidents in the data. And an incident is some data or some content from your interview spoken by your participant in that interview that links back to one of the research questions. Now, you'll have done that in your notes immediately after the interview within 24 hours. But now that you've got more time and you're going through the transcript in some detail, you will have a set of research questions and you're looking at that data through the lens of those research questions. And every incident in the data needs to be coded back to the research questions, but ultimately with some sort of reference for yourself that can help you start to group similar incidents of data in all the interviews eventually. So what Atlas, TI, and NVivo give you is just a facility to automate that. So as you go through the transcript in NVivo, for example, you'll highlight a section of text in the transcript, you right-click, and it offers you then to create a node. Now, a node or a code or an incident, these are really just the same things, and it can be confusing, but they are really all the same things. Ultimately, what you want to be able to do is to create some kind of hierarchy that from the data in your interview links all the way up to higher level categories of data. And those higher level categories of data are just groupings of similar incidents across all the interviews. And an incident can be a phrase, sometimes even a word, possibly even a paragraph, a whole story that the participant tells, etc. And any incident can also link to multiple nodes or codes or data categories. But your ability as a researcher and your theoretical sensitivity to asking the right questions and understanding how the data links back to your research questions will improve the more interviews that you go through. But the mechanical process is to now look for incidents in the data, code those in some tool, or Microsoft Word and Excel works absolutely just as well. And in the coaching call that I had with a lady last week, I just said in Microsoft Word, I said, how many research questions have you got? She said 4. So I said, okay, take green, blue, red, yellow, highlight, okay, in Microsoft Word, and then go through and for each of the 4 research questions, look for incidents that link to those research questions. And when you step back from the transcript, you'll see all the different colors of all the different incidents in the data, and you can quickly then go and group all the yellow ones, all the green ones, all the red ones, all the blue ones. And that then creates data categories. And then you take one research question at a time and you look at that research question, and you should have some method by which you can group all of those incidents together, analyze them, and get patterns in the data and look for themes within those categories that help to answer those research questions. Now, grounded theory adds in a few more steps through that process of coding and how you then abstract the data to high levels to ultimately generate a theory of what's going on in the data. And I can honestly safely say that with NVivo, the most valuable thing I got was just to get that hierarchy of nodes, but I exported it into Excel anyway. And then I did the analysis in Excel. I didn't use what NVivo has to offer. Maybe I should have, but I just felt I had more flexibility analyzing it in Excel, for example. And ultimately what you will then get to is highest level categories of data that have the greatest frequency or amount of incidents. And in grounded theory, again, don't be preoccupied by frequency. Even if there's just one word related to one of your research questions, it could be more significant than a word related to another research question which is mentioned 100 times. So your theoretical sensitivity should help you understand when incidents occur and how relevant and important they are to your research questions and the significance they should have in the data categories that you then ultimately need to analyze. Now, once you've got those data categories, you're going to then look for relationships between the data categories. And you're going to look for, in grounded theory, a core category. And that's the category of data that has the greatest amount of linking or relationship with the other data categories. And in mine, I had a core category and I developed a scale and I mapped all the other categories to that scale. And you'll need to look for some other coding family. And coding families, something also very powerful, but is just a set of ways in which different data categories can be linked together. Go and Google it, and it's something that I've used to help people make progress in their analysis, because I think what happens then is people sit with all these transcripts, they maybe sit with all this analysis that they've done, they've coded, they've categorized, and then they don't know what to do, etc. So that was just a little bit of a discussion around the actual line by line level coding of interview data, or the transcripts, and a little bit around the process of how you can go about coding that data and then linking it back to your research questions through different categories of data that emerge from all your data. Good luck.